If there's anything we learned in 2024, it's that OLEDs are fantastic gaming monitors. And as we start 2025, that's something that came with us too. Hey, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we're going to take a look at the ASUS ROG Strix XG27ACDNG. It's a 1440p 360Hz QD-OLED that sits above the XG27ACDNG in the ROG Strix lineup. It competes against other models with the same specs from other brands, like those from MSI, Samsung, Dell, and Gigabyte. So if you've been paying attention to this channel, you'd know how a QD-OLED should perform. But is that the case here? And should you get it? Before we talk about the performance, let's talk about the design. What you see is what you get. It's a gaming monitor with branding and RGB lighting on the back, and the plastic casing feels well made. You can even adjust the stand in a few ways, so it's easy to place in your favorite position. And you can see that there's a cutout for very basic cable management. Before connecting anything, let's take a look at the inputs. It has your standard DisplayPort 1.4 and HDMI 2.1 bandwidth ports. Plus there's an audio jack and a USB hub with 3 USB-A's and a USB-C. With DisplayPort alt mode and 90 watts of power delivery, you could connect your laptop to this USB-C port and charge it with one cable. Plus, it even has a KVM switch that makes it easy to change sources and use the same devices. So you can have your laptop and gaming PC connected and use the same keyboard and mouse on both. Alright, let's move on to the picture quality now. There really aren't many surprises here, and it's pretty much what you'd expect from a QD-OLED. It has those deep, inky blacks next to bright objects, and there isn't any blooming either. Of course, you need to use it in a dark room to get these perfect blacks. That's because any ambient light causes the black levels to raise, making them look purple. This is a typical issue with QD-OLEDs though, but even if you want to use it in a bright room, it handles glare well. Just keep in mind that reflections from strong light sources can get distracting, like if you have it opposite a bright window. And unlike other QD-OLEDs, this one gets pretty bright in SDR too. Even though it's still not nearly as bright as some mini LED monitors, it's something that sets it apart from the competition. But you might be wondering, if it uses the same panel, why does it get brighter? Good question. Normally these monitors have something called automatic brightness limiter, or ABL. This makes the screen dimmer with bright content that covers the entire screen to help extend the life of the panel. On most monitors, it's pretty aggressive and distracting if you're opening and closing windows, but not so much on this monitor. It just isn't as aggressive, and the changes in brightness aren't so big. Sure, if it bothers you, you can use the uniform brightness setting instead, which makes the screen dimmer with most content. When it comes to HDR brightness, that's where it's more similar to other QD-OLEDs. Small highlights really stand out against the rest of the image, but larger highlights are dimmer. Plus it has some accuracy issues in the console HDR mode. Because there's a slow roll off before the peak brightness, it doesn't let all highlights get as bright as possible. Regardless, the picture quality in HDR is still fantastic. It also displays a wide range of colors without many tone mapping issues. And these colors look vivid, so your favorite content really pops. While we're on the topic of colors, let's switch back to SDR and talk about the color accuracy. It comes with an accurate sRGB mode, which is useful for some casual content creation. But using it locks you out of a few settings, and it isn't perfect either. You still need to calibrate it for the best accuracy. And before we move on to the gaming performance, there's something we need to talk about, and that's text clarity. It has a triangular subpixel layout like any QD-OLED. But what does this mean? Because programs don't render text properly with this layout, there are some issues like fringing around letters. While it's hard to tell for most people and text looks decent overall, it just isn't as sharp as on an LCD display with the same pixel density. Another thing is that there's fringing at the edges of windows, but whether or not this bothers you varies from person to person. And of course, another downside with OLEDs is the famous risk of burn-in. Not to worry though, unless you're only working on it all day, every day, with a ton of static elements on the screen. The best way to avoid burn-in is by changing up what you do, like gaming, watching videos, or browsing the web. Plus the monitor has a few settings to reduce the risk, like a pixel cleaning cycle. Okay, with that done, let's move on to gaming. Like I said at the beginning, it has a 360Hz refresh rate, but you can only get this if you turn on DSC support in the OSD. Otherwise, the refresh rate is limited to 120Hz over DisplayPort DisplayPort or 180Hz over HDMI. Luckily though, it supports any common VRR format to reduce screen tearing. In terms of its pure gaming performance, it's pretty much like any OLED. Motion looks very sharp at any refresh rate, and even though its response time is a bit slower at 60Hz than other OLEDs, the difference is hard to tell. Any blur that you see at low refresh rates is persistence blur. It does have a black frame insertion feature to reduce this blur, but it's not very effective. It only works with fixed 120Hz or 180Hz signals and doesn't really improve anything. At least it has very low input lag though, so gaming feels responsive. But lastly, one downside for gaming with an OLED is the VRR flicker. This happens when the frame rate changes a lot, and it's most distracting in dark scenes. Of course, setting a frame rate cap or having a PC that can maintain consistent frame rates reduces this issue. The monitor does have a setting to reduce it called OLED anti-flicker. It's not a real solution because, well, it disables VRR and it only works over DisplayPort or USB-C. Sure, it does fix it because you can't have VRR flicker without VRR, but you just get screen tearing and stuttering instead. So now that we know how it performs, is it worth getting? In short, yes. If you're looking for a 1440p 360Hz QD-OLED, there's no question this monitor fills that need for you. It has everything you'd want in a gaming monitor, like smooth motion, low input lag, and incredible picture quality. Plus the extra features are handy too. Of course, it's not perfect because you have to think about the trade-offs of burn-in and VRR flicker that you get with OLEDs. And how about against the competition? That's where we're really splitting hairs once we start comparing it to other monitors with the same panel. But of course, even twins look a bit different. Take the MSI MPG27ACDNG for example. It has many of the same features, so which is better? Sure, the ASUS gets brighter, but the MSI has a slightly faster response time. Like I said, splitting hairs. So unless you need something bright, then you should get whichever you could find for cheaper in your region. Of course, if the ASUS is already too out of your price range, then you have to consider something else. The ASUS XG27ACDNG is a lower end option, but there are some clear trade-offs. It has a lower 240Hz refresh rate, colors aren't as vivid, and it doesn't have a USB-C port or KVM switch either. At least it still offers the fantastic gaming performance and picture quality that you've come to know with OLEDs, so there are no surprises there. That's all for the ASUS ROG Strix XG27ACDNG. If you want more details on the monitor, check out our written review. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com, where we help you find the best product for your needs. Ciao. Because you can't have VRR flicker without VRR. But you could... Tried to be the meme there. Throw that in the bloopers at the end.
Send the reference link for that.
Okay.